The story opens with a journalist named Laura Blacklock, a woman whose byline carried real weight in the world of lifestyle reporting. Her columns appeared in top magazines, and her ability to uncover hidden angles made her respected, sometimes even feared among publicists. Yet behind that confident reputation was a journalist still haunted by a story she had never been able to finish. Some months earlier, Laura had arranged an interview that was supposed to change her career. The woman she was about to meet had promised to reveal a secret so explosive it could alter reputations in high society. But before the truth could ever reach Laura's recorder, the woman was found drowned under mysterious circumstances. Since that day, Laura's life had not been the same. Her sleep fractured into short bursts filled with nightmares of water and muffled screams. Then one gray morning, her phone buzzed with a name she had once known well, Ben Morgan, her ex-boyfriend. She let it ring, unwilling to revisit that part of her life. When her colleague noticed how drained she looked, they suggested a short break. But Laura shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I can't stop now." She explained that an extraordinary opportunity had arrived. A shipping magnate's wife, Ann Bulmer, was organizing a fundraising voyage aboard her husband's private luxury yacht. Ann's father was battling stage 4 cancer, and in his honor, her husband planned to establish a massive charitable foundation. Every board member, investor, and socialite had been invited to the gala at sea, and Ann wanted Laura to come along to document it all. Determined to regain her focus, Laura packed her camera, notebooks, and a cautious hope that perhaps this trip would restore her confidence. When she reached the dock, a gleaming vessel awaited her, its hull polished like glass, its decks lined with staff in crisp uniforms. As she stepped onto the gangway, a steward politely asked her to remove her shoes. Yacht etiquette demanded bare feet on teak wood. Slightly embarrassed, she complied, tucking her shoes into a linen bag. The yacht's chief steward, Carla, guided Laura through corridors scented with salt and new varnish. "Cabin number 8, Carla said, opening the door to a compact but luxurious room. Inside, a vase of white lilies swayed gently with the movement of the tide. Another passenger, Dr. Mehta, greeted her in the hallway, a tall man with calm eyes and a quiet smile. Laura's breath caught when she saw Ben Morgan among the guests. So that was why he had called. He too had been invited. Not ready to face him, she retreated quickly to her cabin. From the balcony next door, a cigarette butt flicked by a stranger landed at her feet. Laura frowned, tossed it into her trash bin, and made a mental note to meet her mysterious neighbor later. That evening, the guests gathered in the grand dining room where Richard Bulmer, Ann's husband, offered a toast. "Ann sends her apologies," he announced smoothly. "She isn't feeling well tonight, but will join us tomorrow." His charm filled the room. Moments later, a legendary singer, beloved by the older crowd, made a glamorous entrance. "My mother adored your records," Laura said shyly, earning a gracious smile. Later, when Laura stepped out dressed for dinner, she spotted Ben approaching. To avoid him, she ducked into a random cabin, only to find a young woman already inside, startled by the intrusion. Laura mumbled an apology and fled toward the dining hall. Dinner was exquisite, each course accompanied by murmured conversation and clinking glasses. Afterward, the head of security, Sigrid, approached Laura. "Mrs. Bulmer wishes to see you," she said. Inside a dim cabin, Ann Bulmer sat pale and frail but graceful. "I've read your work," Ann whispered. "You speak truth beautifully." She showed Laura the speech she planned to give at the gala, one declaring her intent to donate her entire fortune to the new foundation, beyond her husband's control. "I call it settling up," Ann said with a tired smile. "Tomorrow we'll talk more." That night, as waves whispered outside, Laura tried to rest, but dreams of drowning dragged her into uneasy sleep. Laura jolted awake. The yacht's engines hummed steadily, yet beneath that sound came a dull thud and a woman's stifled cry. Then a splash cut through the night. She rushed to her balcony. Moonlight glimmered on dark water. There, a woman's body floated, hair spread like pale ribbons. Someone's overboard. Alarms blared. The chief steward shouted code red as crew members sprinted across the deck. The captain met Laura on the bridge. Trembling, she said, "A blonde woman fell from cabin 10. His face hardened. "There is no guest in cabin 10. The booking was canceled 2 days ago. All passengers were awakened. Lars Jensen was missing until found in the library. Heidi slept in her bathtub. Everyone else was accounted for." Laura insisted. "There was blood on my balcony glass." But when they checked, it was spotless. Even the cigarette she had tossed away was gone. The captain dismissed her claim as exhaustion. Alone in her cabin, Laura replayed the scene. Maybe trauma was tricking her mind. Months earlier, she'd watched another woman drown. Could this be another echo? Morning brought silence and a dead internet signal. System glitch, a crewman said. Uneasy, Laura approached Richard Bulmer. I saw someone last night. Let me check the staff, he reluctantly agreed. Crew lined up, chefs, engineers, cleaners. None matched the blonde she'd seen. Later, she visited Ann Bulmer to continue their talk about the Foundation. Ann looked frail. My medicine makes me weak. Tomorrow we'll speak again. In the hallway, Ben Morgan appeared. Why were you in that cabin? I was avoiding you, she snapped. And I saw something real. She opened his laptop, scanning photos. One image stopped her. The same blonde woman taken months earlier. That's her! Ben tried to block her, but she marched to Richard. This is the woman from cabin 10. Who is she? No one knew. Adam, another guest in the picture, shook his head. Dr. Mehta stepped forward. Miss Blacklock, you witnessed a drowning recently? Your mind may be replaying trauma. Richard forced a smile. Let's not jump to conclusions. Visit the spa, clear your thoughts. Laura obeyed, hoping steam and silence would steady her nerves. As condensation fogged the glass, she saw a word traced by a finger. Stop. Heart pounding, she confronted the attendant. No answer. Passing Adam, she demanded, Was it you? He looked confused. She noticed CCTV cameras overhead, but Carla explained they were turned off for VIP privacy. Back in her suite, Laura found cut hair circling the drain, her own. Someone had entered her room, fear hardened into purpose. She grabbed a plastic bag, stepped onto her balcony rail, and edged toward cabin 10. Cold wind whipped her dress. One shoe slipped into the sea. Inside the dark bathroom, she searched. In the sink's drain gleamed strands of blonde hair. Proof. She sealed them inside the bag and hurried to Ben. This is real, she said. She existed. Ben gripped her arm. Listen, these people are powerful. If we haven't solved it before we dock, I'll go with you to the police. But stop for now. His caution only deepened her resolve. She returned to cabin 10 and hid the hair again, knowing she would need it later. That afternoon, lunch was served beneath cloudless skies. Lars Jensen, whose company built AI facial recognition tech, chatted with Richard about investors. Laura's gaze wandered over the polished water, her mind racing. Someone aboard had lied, and somewhere below those waves, the truth was sinking fast. That night, Laura lingered on the deck, unable to rest. Every whisper of the sea felt like a secret. She was certain someone on this yacht had killed that woman and wiped away the evidence. Later, she returned to her room. As she closed the door, a faint sound came from the hallway, a quick knock, then silence. She looked through the peephole. No one stood there. The air felt charged, like the ship itself was watching her. At dawn, she met Lars Jensen again. Over breakfast, he explained how his company's AI software could match a stranger's face within seconds. With enough images, he said, you can find anyone. The comment stirred something in her memory. The photo on Ben's laptop. The woman's face, the connection that didn't fit. Later that morning, Richard gathered guests for a small luncheon. His speech praised Anne's generosity and vision for the Foundation. His tone cracked once, eyes glistening. Laura studied him carefully. A grieving husband or a man rehearsing emotion? After lunch, the celebrated singer performed on deck, her voice drifting across the waves. She teased Anne about an old duet they'd sung years earlier, but Anne, or the woman pretending to be her, excused herself, claiming fatigue. The distance between the two women's voices unsettled Laura. Something about Anne's tone didn't match the frail woman she'd met earlier. Determined to investigate quietly, Laura slipped below deck. She showed the photograph to crew members one by one. Have you seen this woman? Each shook their head. When she asked how easy it would be to smuggle someone aboard without the crew noticing, a young sailor muttered, Not right to answer that. Ma'am? And turned away. Moments later, Dr. Mehta appeared, catching her near the restricted corridor. Miss Blacklock, guests aren't allowed down here. I was walking, she said quickly. He smiled politely, yet his eyes searched hers. Be careful where curiosity leads. Back in her cabin, she noticed a broken button on the floor, unfamiliar, from someone else's clothing. She picked it up, pulse quickening. The button's thread matched Dr. Mehta's shirt. She reached for her coat, but the plastic bag with the blonde hair was gone. Panic surged. Only Ben had known. She stormed to his cabin. You told them, she accused. I had to, he admitted. I wanted them to believe you. Now they'll destroy the evidence, she cried. Meanwhile, the singer packed in fear. That journalist is unstable, she told Carla. I'm leaving before this turns ugly. Others agreed. The atmosphere on the yacht grew cold. Conversation stopped when Laura entered. To them, she had become the crazy guest who imagined murders at sea. That night, she sat alone, staring at the black horizon. Then, a knock. She opened the door a crack. Footsteps hurried away down the corridor. Grabbing her flashlight, she followed, deeper into the ship's lower decks where the sound of machinery thundered. There, between steel beams and humming pipes, a figure appeared. A young woman with blonde hair, alive. Laura gasped. "You're her! You're alive!" The woman stepped forward. "Now you've seen me. Forget this. He'll kill you if you don't." Laura's mind raced. "You wrote stop on my shower door. Why warn me?" "I didn't push you," the woman said quickly. "I was trying to protect you." Then realization dawned. The voice, the posture. "You're not Anne," Laura whispered. The woman hesitated, eyes filling with fear. "My name is Carrie." Before Laura could respond, Carrie struck her with something heavy. Darkness swallowed her. When Laura regained consciousness, she was trapped in a storage compartment. The single light flickered above her. The only exit was a small hatch far out of reach. Her head throbbed, yet as she lay there, the pieces began to align. The woman she'd seen floating was the real Anne Bulmer. The woman now impersonating her, Carrie, had been living Anne's life since that night. Laura whispered to herself, Richard killed his wife and replaced her. Locked in the storage bay, Laura forced herself to think clearly. From faint voices beyond the wall, she pieced together the truth. Richard Bulmer had discovered that Anne planned to cut him off and donate everything to the charity. In rage, he'd turned to Carrie, a lookalike hired through Lars Jensen's facial recognition company, paying her to impersonate Anne just long enough to sign legal documents. But when the real Anne saw them together in cabin 10, an argument had broken out, and Richard killed her. Carrie had been trapped by fear and guilt ever since. Laura pressed her ear to the metal door as footsteps approached. Carrie entered, holding a lantern. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "I just wanted to keep my daughter safe." Laura's voice shook. "He's using you, Carrie. Once that will is signed, you'll disappear too." Carrie looked torn but backed away. "They're docking in 2 hours. Stay quiet." She slipped out, leaving the hatch unlatched. When Laura heard the engines slow, she climbed onto a crate, pushed the hatch open, and crawled through narrow tunnels until she reached her cabin. Her reflection in the mirror startled her, bruised face, blood on her sleeve, but she was alive. Outside, Ben was arguing with the crewman. "I can't leave without her," he said. Dr. Mehta interrupted, assuring him that Laura was resting. Ben hesitated, then stepped off the yacht, promising to return. Laura seized the moment. She searched Anne's drawer and found the original will, sealed and signed before Anne's death. It named the foundation as sole beneficiary, leaving Richard with nothing. Clutching the papers, Laura ran to the communications room to call for help, but Dr. Mehta appeared holding a syringe. "Richard wants to handle this privately," he said. She darted past him, sprinting down the corridor. Mehta and the captain chased her through the lounge. She reached the deck, but they cornered her. The doctor lunged. The needle plunged into Ben, who had returned just in time. He collapsed as the sedative took hold. Mehta grabbed Laura by the throat, choking her. Ben, barely conscious, struggled up and hit him. The syringe snapped. Mehta fell. Ben slumped against the railing, whispering, "Finish it!" Laura jumped into the icy water below. The shock stole her breath, but she forced her limbs to move, pushing toward the faint lights of the harbor. Waves battered her until she reached the rocky shore and dragged herself into a fisherman's hut. She lit damp wood, trembling beside the fire until dawn. Back on the yacht, Mehta told Richard, "She won't survive that cold." Richard replied coldly, "Once Carrie's signs make her vanish too." That evening at the gala on shore, guests gathered in glittering halls. Cameras flashed. Carrie, dressed as Anne, hesitated before the lawyer's table. Her hands shook as she signed the forged will. Richard smiled, satisfied, but in the crowd, a familiar figure appeared, Laura, pale but alive. She approached Sigrid, Anne's head of security. "Anne's dead," Laura whispered. "The woman on stage is someone else. Richard murdered his wife." She showed her Anne's true will, the ink blurred by seawater. Sigrid's expression hardened. "Prove it!" Richard stepped on stage to give his speech. Mid-sentence, Laura walked out from the audience and seized the microphone. "Before you cheer, know whose money this really is." The crowd murmured. Carrie whispered, "Let her speak." Security moved to restrain Laura. but guests protested. Laura held up the real document. This was Anne Bulmer's final wish, to donate everything to charity, not to Richard's empire. Richard barked orders to cut the sound, but Carrie spoke into the silence. "She's telling the truth." Fury twisted his face. "You're not even Anne!" he shouted, grabbing Carrie and pressing a knife to her throat. He dragged her toward the dock, desperate to escape by boat. Sigrid followed, gun drawn. One shot echoed. Richard staggered but lunged again. Laura rushed forward, wrenching the knife from his grip and driving it back into his chest. He fell beside the water he'd once ruled. Later, as sirens wailed and reporters swarmed, Laura watched Carrie reunited with her daughter under police protection. Justice at last had surfaced.